Most women in leadership are stuck in a hidden double bind when giving feedback. Be direct, you're labeled aggressive. Be soft, you're labeled weak. So then, how do we give feedback in a way that is authentic without playing a losing game? In the next few minutes, I'll share a simple, proven framework that will help you deliver feedback in a way that's clear, kind, and actually drives change without compromising who you are. The problem with a lot of feedback is that it's delivered in a way that's not brain-friendly. It usually falls into one of two camps. It can be indirect, where it's so subtle that the person receiving it doesn't recognize that it's feedback. Or if they understand that it is feedback, they don't quite understand what to do with it because they're confused. The other type is that it's too direct, and with that directness comes a lot of defensiveness. This defensiveness comes from our brain regions, our amygdalas, that is always on the constant lookout for social threats. When it's activated, it triggers defensiveness, and then therefore causes the receiver to retreat and withdraw. So if that's the case, then how do you give feedback that actually works? After struggling with this myself, and coaching women in tech and leadership, I realized it's not about changing who you are, or playing politics. It's about using a simpler and smarter framework that makes your feedback actually land. So I'll walk you through it step by step so that by the end of this, you'll have a clear framework that you can use in your next feedback conversation. Start with a micro yes. This is a short yes or no respectful question that opens the door to conversation. Something like, do you have a few minutes to talk about how the meeting yesterday went? What this does is that it primes the conversation, letting the receiver know that feedback is coming. It also gives the receiver autonomy to say yes or no, whether or not they're more receptive and open to having this kind of conversation now, or if another time would be better. And if another time is better, you can always follow up with, when's a better time to talk about this? Or you can bring it up in the next conversation and ask again. The second part of the framework is where you describe what happened. And there's a simple sub-framework that we can use to describe this. It's called Situation, Behavior, Impact, or SBI for short. The situation is where you describe when this happened and where it happened. Maybe it happened over the last 2 weeks, or it happened in a meeting recently. The second part is the behavior, where you describe what the person did objectively. And the third is the impact, where you describe what was the outcome of this behavior, what happened as a result of it, and why this matters. For example, you could say, during the meeting yesterday, situation, I noticed that you spoke over Mia mid-turn. Behavior. As a result, the discussion got shut down and a lot of important information got missed. Impact. Clearly state what you saw or heard, objectively. Try not to assume. Avoid using vague or subjective language, called blur words. Things like, you are being defensive, or you are being unreliable. These make assumptions out of people's actions. And use specificity. Be specific about what exactly the behavior was. That way, they know exactly the type of behavior that they should be avoiding next time. The third part is the reflection question. And honestly, this is probably one of the most important parts of this framework. It's essentially an open question that allows the receiver to, as you guessed it, reflect on their actions. And if you're not sure what an open question is, it's using the words how or what to elicit an open-ended answer versus an answer that responds with yes or no. Some examples of this could be, how did you see it? Or, what are some things that we could do to create space to allow more balanced voices in meetings? By using an open-ended question, we turn it into a conversation and orient it towards problem solving. When people feel included in the solutions aspect of it rather than the problem, they're more likely to follow through with any actions that they need to do out of it. It builds trust, and it makes your communication even stronger. Whether you're giving feedback about a sprint retro, a code review, or maybe some high-stakes product meeting, the way that you deliver feedback significantly impacts how your team sees you and feels trust with you. and how your team grows. Let's say you had a sprint review and a team member brings up that a feature is delayed that the team wasn't looped in on. You dropped the ball on the feature. We had no idea that this was happening until the sprint review, and it made us look so bad in front of the PM. You should work on communicating better. Okay, that was a bit extreme, but it highlights a couple things that can happen in feedback. Using blaming language. It triggers defensiveness in people because nobody likes to be blamed for things. Not giving enough context, because giving enough context allows the person to know when this happened and what the behavior and situation was. It also gives people no time to respond or reflect on themselves to see how they can do better next time. And it focuses on character rather than behavior. So now let's try this again using the framework. Hey, can I share something I noticed in the sprint review yesterday? During the meeting, you mentioned that the feature was delayed, but we hadn't gotten any updates about that in the last several days. As a result, the team had to readjust our roadmap last minute, and it shook trust with the PM. What's your take on what happened? Or, if you want to be more direct, you could say, how might we handle updates differently next time? The important insight here is that you're not attacking them. You're sharing what happened and why it matters. Why does a framework like this work? The micro yes, the objective what happened, and the reflective question? Well, it's brain-friendly. It doesn't trigger defensiveness. It focuses on facts rather than feelings or assumptions. And it opens the door for reflection and introspection. This structure works for anybody, and it's especially useful if you're ever worried that giving direct feedback makes you come across as too harsh or too emotional, a problem that a lot of women in tech fear. A few common mistakes that people have when giving this feedback. They use absolute language like you always or you never. They give this feedback in public or while somebody is in a very stressful situation. Usually people will not be as receptive to feedback in those times. And they jump to intent rather than asking about it. When we ask, we build a bridge between us and them and build better collaboration. So try this out at your next one-on-one. You can use it with your junior devs, cross-functional partners, or even your manager. Yes, it does work upwards as well. You can even use it as positive feedback. It helps just a little bit of framing of how to give it. A few quick tips. You can practice it beforehand by writing it down and speaking it out loud. This will help you become more comfortable with the muscle. And the second is that over time, you'll just become more comfortable as you give it more, and it'll become more natural, and you'll feel much better about creating and giving feedback in a way that's more authentic to you. So to recap, use the micro yes, the objective what happened, and the reflective question to give feedback next time. This method helps create clarity and better outcomes that people will actually follow through on. And it builds trust and connection with your team. If this resonated, share this with another woman in tech who's building her leadership toolkit as well. And if you're into content like this, hit like and subscribe so you're up to date with any videos that come out next. Let's keep learning together.